Hello and welcome to International Coaching Week 2022. And the theme is Reimagine the Future. I'm Sarah Graves with inviteCHANGE, a full-time coach and former executive in the wine industry. It is a report from McKinsey 2021 on women in leadership. One of their defining statements is that women in the workplace are redefining and leading a new way. And we think that that intersects beautifully with Reimagine the Future. So today we've brought together some leaders who epitomize this kind of new standard of leadership. And they are three executive women who are bringing the four key elements that McKinsey defines, which is that they do more to support their teams. They are champions of diversity in the workplace, and the work that they produce actually produces greater outcomes to the organization. And last but not least, they don't get the recognition they deserve. Now, that begs a new panel, so look for that in the future. But today we're going to take a look at how leadership and having a coach intersect, and how these leaders chose coaching as a way to support their leadership, to expand it and strengthen their capacity. So I'd like to introduce each one of them. First of all is Lucia Lema-Walker, who lives just outside of Newberg, Oregon, as she is the general manager for Rocco Winery. This is a winery that was founded by a couple who had over 35 years in the wine industry here in Oregon and really paved the way for Oregon to be known as a place to get your bubbles from. And says, I'm a bubbles queen. I'm a big fan of Rocco Winery. Welcome, Lucia.
Thank you, Sarah.
And next we have Lisa Clark, who is currently the retail director for Oregon Fruit Company. She is a past executive vice president at Young's Market Company, running teams in both Oregon and Washington. And full disclosure, she was a counterpart. She and I got to work very closely together, be in the boardroom, and be the two of the 10 that represented the female gender. So welcome to Lisa, as she now works with not just Oregon, Washington, but the entire nation and Asia and Australia. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Sarah. Glad to be here.
And then we have Brianna Seeley, who is the Director of Sales and Marketing for Argyle Winery. She is a former rising star with Young's Market Company and ran their estates group, which is a high-end luxury division of the wine. And in that distributor role, learned so much. And then she decided to go into the winery business and so be a supplier. So she's now running the team there for Argyle. Welcome, Brianna.
Thank you, Sarah.
Well, one of the things that we talked about in preparation, and I should say that our CEO at inviteCHANGE, Janet Harvey, one of her lines is early is easy, except that we couldn't be early because Brianna was vacationing in Hawaii and all of us had a lot of things on our plate. So we just got together earlier this week to talk about what's important for you all today as the viewers. What would we like you to take away from our conversation today? And in thinking in terms of if you're looking for a coach, if you already are a coach, or you want coaching for your team, what might be some takeaways that we're looking at today? And Lisa, would you like to kick us off here?
I'll just take you through how I got connected with coaching with Sarah. My company offered coaching to me as I started a new job. After 20 years in the wine industry, I had a new team, a new company, whole new role, and a new culture. And I think that transition was pretty overwhelming for somebody who's lived in one culture for 20 years. So really getting to partner with someone who is skilled and trained to kind of take me through a growth mindset to get to a place where I wanted to be with my goals and alignment with the new culture and some of the things that I wanted to work on. Working with Sarah was incredible to help me stay accountable to what I wanted to achieve.
Lucia, what about you?
Having a coach has been incredible, a really side-by-side partnership that I never knew could be possible. And it was extremely beneficial to have this person be an influencer, but also outside of the industry. It could be either, being in a new role or a current position. It doesn't matter what, for me, it didn't matter when or where. It was just making time for it and discovering this essential partner. And it really helped me detangle my thoughts and really bringing out more of the qualities that I knew I had, bringing those out to shine, more balanced, and to create a positive environment for my team.
Yeah, I like that side-by-side inclusion there, because so many times people think, oh, I want a coach, they're going to give me advice, they're going to be an expert. And really what you're describing is that it's a side-by-side walking together partnership, no expertise. It's really that partnership. What about you, Brianna?
So I had a major life change welcoming twins into my life at the same time that I got a big promotion. And I knew that I needed some extra support. And it has just been an incredible resource for me in having a touch point and a toolbox. And when I come up against something, my boys are now 7 years old, so 7 years later, when I come up against something, it's nice to be able to get in and say, okay, we've been here before. It looks a little different, but let's dig into this and have fun with it instead of challenges feeling overwhelming or just not possible. And the other piece is on a very personal note. On the other side of a major medical event, it was really wonderful to have a partner outside of my traditional circle of family and friends that we could reflect back and say, okay, this is who I know I am. This is who I was before. Which parts do we want to bring forward? And it was just it's been a wonderful way of reflecting and looking forward at the same time.
You kind of debunk the notion that you have a coach when you have time for it, or when you're too busy, or you have a medical emergency, or this, then you don't want the coach then. And what you're saying is that while you might have taken a break, it was actually a real asset for you. I know that when I was becoming a coach and had my own coach, my father passed, and it was, coaching isn't counseling, but having a place where I could talk about where I was getting stuck or where I was butting up right against my own emotional impact, and how to use the tools to have emotional management was really, really helpful. Well, the other thing I like to do is define terms. I love to play with words, and I purposely use the word strong when we put this panel together. And then when I went to investigate on Google, all of the imagery were, big muscle men and, Lord knows, characters from our distant past and maybe not too distant past, as far as that epitomizing strength. And I think that this group, there's a whole different idea of what does being strong as a leader mean to you? Lisa?
I would say that it's kind of more of putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, and really, bringing up the courage to, look at yourself as a leader and look at your team and make the changes that need to happen, and really be transparent in communication. So I really think it's more about vulnerability than maybe muscles.
Yeah. Brianna, what about you?
For me, it's about listening. When I am really tuning in and listening to my team, I'm able to show up for them in a different way. That really, at the end of the day, it's strength. It's coming from a position of strength that supports them.
Mhm. Yeah, many times we think of like a big, strong personality or an ego that's strong. And what you're basically doing is flipping that on his ear and saying, no, it's actually more, quiet, listening, being available and being vulnerable. So this is a very different perspective. What about you, Lucia?
Those two are obviously very fabulous as well. And I'll also add in empathy. I really think that empathy contributes to a positive and progressive environment. Just creating a safe space and having that honest conversation when the time is right with your employees and staff.
And there's almost like what I'm hearing is a mental shift, a mindset shift of that strength looks like this, and bringing these different character strengths that are much more inviting than, let's say, the old style of command and control. It's more that, that new book by Stephen M. R. Covey called Trust and Inspire. You're already in that gate as leaders, that you are listening, bringing empathy, vulnerability. That's the way for the team to trust you and trust each other, and then live and act from inspiration. As leaders, we can't make our team do anything. We can inspire them to tap into their own intrinsic motivation. And that's what you all have done. And certainly to get to the places that you have in your careers, I've got to wonder that you already had great communication skills when you were moving up and along. It came to me last night. I'm just so curious, how has coaching upped your communication level? And anybody can start, because I sprung this on you, but I'm just really curious about how your communication shifted through coaching.
I'll start off on that one. I think it's brought a different level of awareness to my communication, how I am showing up for my team or anyone I'm working with, and what that brings to a situation. There's a level of responsibility, and then also where that stops, which is something that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
I would also say that in being a strong leader, your style and your influencing style in communication can affect the team. So that's something that Sarah and I worked on too, is really understanding that you can influence with your communication style, and how to, as Brianna said, how to kind of check in on that and see what that means and how maybe to refine that. So that's what I think I've learned over working with Sarah on communication style.
Yeah, I would add on just the general assertiveness, and also knowing when to, listen more than speak. It's been really influential to my team to really make sure that they have a voice and to share that voice, and that I want to hear that voice genuinely.
I think too that sometimes we speak or communicate from the vantage point of, I want that person to get what I'm saying. And what I've noticed is that shift into listening from the place of, I want to understand what they're saying, and bringing that curiosity is what I'm hearing that you're talking about, of really listening from a different place. Well, thinking of getting ready for a session, one of the questions that came from a potential client, I guess, was, how does a person know what they're going to talk about when they are looking at their calendar, they see they've got a coaching session coming up? How do you prepare, and how do you know what you're going to talk about in your coaching session? Brianna.
So for me, sometimes it's very obvious. It could be a big, meaty topic that's just front of mind, a recent experience or something that I need some support and guidance on. And other times it comes through the trust that I have in my partnership with my coach. And it sort of is teased out through a conversation. And I really have enjoyed that part of it because there are so many things happening in our everyday lives. And so the big stuff is easy. The obvious things are easy. But there are oftentimes things that have a subtlety to them that are equally important, but don't present themselves in the same way.
Yeah. What about you, Lucia?
Yeah, it was either really obvious and right in front of me, and I had that trust with you, Sarah, immediately, really just sharing honest situations in real time. But then there was also the teasing, the tethering out. That again, it's such a side-by-side relationship, and it's because of that constant meeting, the just the habit of the ritual of doing your homework, being reflective, and really bringing that out to unpack.
Lisa, what about you?
Well, Sarah, as you know me, I am very goal-oriented, and working with you as my partner, we set objectives, we set the goals, and I really work that plan as I do in my career. So I really like the accountability to go back to what we had set forth. I took notes, and I tried to make sure that I was focusing on the good things that I had accomplished, not only just being like, telling myself I didn't accomplish enough. So you really helped me, stay on that path. And also, just to really call forth some of the good things that were happening each and every time we met. So the consistency was fabulous.
Yeah, it really speaks to each of you how you have committed to your growth. You show up for yourself. And that sends a message to our brain. A lot of times people think that their brain is it, but it can't be your master because our brains are wired in a certain way. And so by almost counterbalancing, you are counterbalancing some of the negative thoughts, which can naturally have a higher impact because that kept us alive many thousands of years ago. And so that negative impact on our brain, counterbalancing that with what's positive, what's working, what's awesome about, every bit of incremental growth is such a wonderful practice. And especially women in a patriarchal society, we all, men and women, have a critic voice. Throw in a patriarchy, throw in any kind of, religious or club or some kind of extra treatment there. And you might have some influences that are pointing out what you didn't do. And what I loved about what you just said, Lisa, is that the emphasis is on what did get accomplished. And then you tell your brain, hey, I want more of that, right? And so really awesome work that you all have done. So that leads me to, what you're going to talk about in your session. There's a whole element of the side-by-side partnership, and there's also the agreement that we make as client and coach for when you're playing small or when you're not being yourself, that as a coach, I'm willing to challenge that, right? To challenge how you're seeing yourself or the mindset that you might be in. Talk a little bit about how the accountability factor shows up in your relationship with your coach. And let me see let's kick off with Brianna.
I just find that it makes it more fun to get into something that can otherwise feel overwhelming or challenging, and you have a partner in navigating it.
Yeah, it's like you got a team. You got a team, Brianna. Yeah, that's great. Lucia, what about you?
The leadership development plan was such a great roadmap for me that it wasn't just checking the boxes. It went beyond, and it was me taking the time with my partner, Sarah, to really make sure that that will just focusing on staying on track and be sure to celebrate as well. That was the fun part.
Yeah. Lisa, you're bursting over there. I could tell you're about ready to say something.
I agree with Lucia. I like the plan. I like to work the plan. It helped me stay accountable, and really just jotting things down throughout, in between the sessions, held me accountable to the plan. And also meeting with Sarah when we would have our conversation, it was great to, be able to have her think things through differently for me as well, to see if I was still kind of on track or if there's other things that I need to incorporate. So I love the accountability that Sarah gave me in each of our sessions for sure. Yeah.
The desired results column, I'm throwing a curveball, but the desired results column, a lot of times people, when they first fill out their plan, it's going to be something like, oh, the CEO thinks more highly of me, or I got this project done, or it's kind of check the box. And I think one of the biggest changes that I experience as a coach working with clients is that instead of having it be a task or, like you said, Lucia, checking the box, instead it's the question of what's the experience that you want to have of yourself as you do XYZ, as you do the goal. For instance, Lisa, you're talking about the goals, but really it was the experience of yourself that you were bringing to your sessions. So say a little bit about that. How big of a mind shift was that for you, a mindset shift?
Well, I think what you're asking me is, I do like to hit the goal, but what you brought out in me is to stop and reflect how it was feeling it with me. Am I aligned? How did that make me feel? And I really think that that's a challenge for me to be more reflective. Being in sales, you're always just trying to get to the next goal or objective. But I love the way that you called forth. It's like, reflect for a minute. And how are you feeling about your accomplishments and how things are going for you on this journey? So I think that is still part of what I do today from what I learned.
Lucia, what about you?
100% agree with Lisa. It's so much unpacking and taking the time to check in, but having someone to remind you too, just honestly about your feelings. And I still remember, I know it was within 2 sessions, but it was so much that I was unpacking and checking in on myself that I was pretty challenged and surprised by it. But it was a welcoming surprise. It was really uplifting, and it trained me to really continue that focus and unpack on my own. Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Brianna?
I just really agree with Lisa on my experience of the thing, right? That's really what that checking the box looks like now versus outward or external approval or alignment. It's really about how did I show up? Did I show up how I wanted to? And if the answer is yes, then that's a win. And sometimes that looks different to other people, and that can be hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that shifting between the actual transaction and creating relationship. And of course, that starts with each of us internally, that relationship with ourselves and what we want to experience. I was also part of the process is for people to take that plan to their CEO or board of directors or whatever. And that I think is also a real opportunity to match up goals that are activities or projects or accomplishments with the all important what I will experience of myself, how I will grow my leadership and experience myself through this process. Because we'll always have sales goals, we'll always have projects, we'll always have something. But what is in it for us, and what is the growth that internal growth that has the positive impact on others. And speaking of others, not everybody's nice. Not everybody plays nice in the sandbox. Sometimes we have difficult people or people in difficult situations or even incivility in the workplace that shows up. How did having a coach support you as you navigated as a leader? You're going to have those difficult situations. Who wants to go first on this one?
I will. One of the things Sarah taught me was looking at myself and others with that whole resourceful, capable, and creative mindset. And so when I get into a situation where I feel like the situation's difficult, or I feel maybe perceive the person's being difficult, I really stop and take a breath, use some breath work there, and then really think about that mindset, that this person has those qualities. And then I just get through it and, we move on. And so that really has helped me kind of reframe when things get a little sticky, I would say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The reframing, and also not staying in my the values that I want to uphold, and not being pulled by the energy of a difficult conversation or a difficult interaction, and staying in my integrity and how I want to show up for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree too. Just the breath work, it's even that tiny change or just few seconds that you give to yourself before you react is so beneficial and will be in your favor. The realization of me not having to respond right away. I'm such a believer in that, especially when you get those kind of angry emails. You're like, I'm going to give you a day and then I'll respond, and we can reflect together, creating a safe space for each other.
That is so excellent. I sometimes reflect on when I had a lot of teams and such, and I wish I knew then what I know now. I mean, I knew a fair amount, but I just love that idea of you don't have to answer in the moment. Give it time. So many cultures say sleep on it, and we tend to act forcefully, act quickly, and just that pause and the breathing. And definitely there are days where I feel as a coach that I get paid to open people up to the Samavriti breath, or the four square the military uses, of just those deep breaths that help us move from a very highly emotional state into a more calm and rational, but also not just rational, open-minded, and more options and all of that. So I think too that women get a bad rap, even in this McKinsey report, that women are 3 times more likely to be called out on emotional management. And yet we know that there are emotions out there that men display. Anger, number one, that gets constantly overlooked. So speak to you started, Lucia, with talking about the breath and taking time and taking a pause. But think about the toolbox that you gathered. I presented things, but you decided which things were important to you as clients. So think about that toolbox and put yourself in a meeting somewhere in your last, couple years. When and where did you use the tool? And, tell us a little story about how that was for you.
A lot of empowering language. With the last few years being such a struggle, for everyone really, and the way that the world has shifted in general, just taking a step back and putting yourself in someone else's shoes, not knowing where they're coming from or what their day has entailed. Just really still creating that positive energy and no negative talk at all. Don't bring up anything that's happened in the past. Focus on the present. That has really been a powerful tool in my management.
Great.
I would say curiosity. That has served me really well as of late, for a lot of the reasons that you just shared, Lucia, around just navigating such challenging times and everyone coming with a lot to the workplace, and we're one person. And so we can't expect that people are going to fully check everything at the door. And frankly, we don't want them to all the time, but we need to be able to help them navigate their experience when it isn't suiting the team, the workplace, or themselves. And that being curious of people really helps that, because it comes, I am then coming to the table with a curiosity which feels much more positive than accusational or sort of questioning tone.
I actually use the core values toolbox that Sarah had kind of shared with me. So when I start a meeting, I used this concept of stating a core value of our company and talking about the core value, whether it be trust, respect, and then talking about the core value and then kicking the meeting off and kind of relating the meeting on how we're going to stay within that core value. And it really kind of lightened the whole, oh yeah, we got that core value. We got this big, heavy project that maybe not all of us are hitting their timelines, but it really was just kind of staying in that mind frame of what the core value was. So I actually went to another meeting after that, and somebody pulled it out too and said, I'm going to start the meeting with the core value. So it was kind of fun to see.
That is great. I had a client this week who was talking about the shield, which I didn't put in your list, but having a shield that both has love or positivity coming in, but all that's going to go out is also positivity and love and acceptance. And she introduced it to her happy hour cocktail group, and without missing a beat, she said it blew her away. Every one of the women could think of an object or an animal or something in nature or something in their lives that would provide it for them, so that we're not constantly being bombarded by other people's energy, or maybe they're having a tough day. And it can even be used in the grocery store or in your family, that instead of taking on other people's upset, you are, as you just said earlier, Lisa, the WRCC, looking at them through the lens that they are whole, resourceful, capable, and creative, and being able to be in their presence without being reactive or negative. And so I think that really using the tools in other parts of your life, and I know each of you have done that and do that, but with family, friends, and even strangers, those tools can be so useful.
Or kids.
Kids, yes, yes, kids. Yeah. All right, well, and we're open to any questions from our viewers too, so feel free to pop on. We're going to go to one of my favorite things to talk about in coaching. We talked earlier about neural pathways and how our brain is going to overemphasize a negative event in our life because that's how we're wired. We had to have that negative emphasis so that it would make an impression upon us and keep us alive. So now here, fast forward, we're in 2022, yet our brains are still overemphasizing negative events. So how do we counterbalance that? And one of the ways that we do that in coaching is we, as a coach, are not only your challenger and your champion, but we are your cheerleader, and we love to celebrate with you and celebrate all those incremental wins. So I want to hear from this group on how, because you've all been in the wine business, you know how to celebrate, but this is a different celebration because it's about celebrating you. So how was shifting that mindset for you, and how does celebration show up in your life now as a result of that? Who's bursting? Who wants to go first?
I could start.
I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, celebration for me has changed drastically in a way that we are raised, or I was raised, to celebrate your birthday, celebrate special occasions, kind of like how we see sparkling wine too. You don't have to wait for that special occasion. You can celebrate any sort of wins or loses. So celebrate in any way that you can. And by doing that and bringing that to my company, it's really creating a beautiful, positive change in the environment. So much that I just giggle because I've started a cake break at the company, because who doesn't like cake? And yeah, just it makes me feel good and like a kid. So I'm just bursting right now.
That's great.
Well, Sarah knows that I struggle with celebrations. I as well was raised to celebrate Hallmark type events. And so personal events or personal wins were harder for me to stop and celebrate. So I think it was 2 sessions deep, and Sarah still, are you celebrating yet? I'm like, I don't really celebrate much. But I started this little jar. And what I did is I put little slips of paper in this jar, and it was all different things on, if I were to celebrate, what would I do? So when she would ask me, are you going to celebrate? I'd pull a thing out of the jar and go, okay, this is what I get to do for my celebration. And it really does make you stop and think that there are wins throughout each week or each, day that you should stop and really think about, for your brain to say, hey, I'm doing things right. And so Sarah taught me that, and I have my little bowl of all the things I can use to celebrate.
Very creative. Love that.
Lisa, I'm going to steal that. I love that. And cake break. Both of those are awesome. It's also been a bit of a hard one for me. I love the reminder, and I still need it after all this time working with you, Sarah. It's a good check-in, but I also have found that in conversation with team members or with my spouse, I'll say like, that's worth celebrating, which is really fun to get to be able to reflect that back to somebody when they share an experience that they have, knowing that they've been working through something. I think it's just like all of it, it's almost like accountability to the process, and celebration is part of that. And so I've really enjoyed that.
Too, is that each of you in your own way, without revealing anything, have also shared moments with those that you love or work with. Sometimes celebrating is just a toast with your daughter, your spouse, a walk with your dog, and you're talking out loud saying, I'm really proud of myself today. And what's interesting is what happens with the brain is that the white myelin tissue, when you have that, okay, here I'm celebrating, that tissue wraps around the synapse and it makes a point of it. So when we celebrate ourselves, even our incremental growth, and instead of, like you said, Lucia, I was raised to its hallmark, its special occasions, we were also, I was raised to, well, you probably should have already been doing that, or of course you should do that, right? Well, we never would have started walking if people talked like that to us as we were falling down and hitting our head and getting back up and walking in between chairs. What did we have? We had people that were just so excited for us and clapping and cheering and loving us up, and we walked, right? How did we think that as adults we could just so easily pass over our incremental growth? It's such a nurturing, nourishing, and replenishing way to treat ourselves, to celebrate each incremental, and then each incremental step. And then when you get to the big, then you can just, have a big blast. But each step of the way, and doing that with your team, Brianna, that's it. Cake break. By the way, we just heard from our videographer in chat. He says, love the cake break. So I think you may have started a trend here, Lucia. Yeah. So another question from the chat comes up, and that is thinking about the ripple effect. Now, each one of you was inside of an organization where other people weren't necessarily doing what you were doing, investing in coaching. So what was the ripple effect of just you, even inside of your organization, how has that rippled out? Pause. All right, so I'm going to tell a quick story. So when I was getting coaching and I was inside of Young's, one of the things that I did for my ripple effect was everything I was learning in coaching school, I did with my team. And so we had buddy pairs, we had goals that were written. Instead of I'm going to hit 20% increase, it's I'm going to experience my confidence and my pride in hitting my goal this year, right? And they had buddy pairs across the state that they worked. They were coach and client with each other and worked their good improvements and things like that. So the ripple effect was that even though I was the only one at the time going through coaching, I was sharing that with others, and they were having an experience of themselves that was different.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great story, Sarah. That's I would build on that. Early on in my coaching, I was navigating some really hard times in team dynamics, and my direct supervisor did not know that I had started coaching with you, and he came to me like maybe about 6 months in and just said, "What's different? What's different with you?" And I think I pretty quickly, put a pin in it, that it was like, wow, well, I have this resource that's been really helping me, navigate this hard time. And so as a result, I was showing up different, which had a ripple on not just him as my direct boss, but the team and the organization at large. So it's really honestly endless, because then you're taking that home as well. These are not tools, and these aren't things that you just use in the workplace. It's how I show up for my spouse and my children as well.
And I would say the same thing as Brianna. People noticed the changes in me as well, which felt great. So I think that ripple effect not just started with my noticing it, but other people that I worked with were asking, wow, there's something different. So that made me feel good. And of course, taking that throughout your life with your family as well. I really feel like that was positive as well.
Well, and you mentioned the core value piece, which I love, because many times we have our own core values, and then the company has its set of core values. And the more that those intersect, so you brought it to the boardroom, and then that's the ripple effect, and they took it somewhere else and they spread the word. So it shows how, while of course inviteCHANGE preference is to do some team coaching and spread out, one person can make a difference in that ripple effect inside of a company. And Lucia, what about you? What about your team?
They've definitely seen a lot of change and, trust in leadership. That's really been the biggest takeaway, is knowing that they're going to be taken care of, that I support them, and that they have a voice. Just having more really great communication, more than before, has been really showing up more.
That's great. So what's the question I haven't asked that I should, team, gals? I'm looking through everything. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you ask us? I don't know if you, what would we tell someone who's never?
Yes, I was going to wrap with that. I'm looking at the timer at 4:45. We've had a couple questions, but I don't see any more at the moment. So I was thinking, is there a closet question we haven't asked? So as you go forward, this just came to me. As you go forward with your more developed inner coach, with a growth mindset, with some of the things that you've been sharing here today about how you view a system, a situation, people, how do you continue to nurture and grow your inner coach? What are some ways that you do that?
A big one for me is writing and reflecting. I've always been a big journaler, but it's a really great place for me to pull these, whatever we're working on, or whatever I'm working on, into daily practice.
Yeah,
One thing that I've done is I built a notebook for all my work with Sarah, and I reflect back on different areas. So Brianna mentioned it earlier, when you see a situation that you've seen before and you don't get stuck, because you can kind of refer back to some of the tools that you had given me. And then I kind of use that workbook per se to continue to really focus. And I also do 3x5 cards where I keep my toothbrush. I have it, my 3x5 card. Every time I brush my teeth, I reflect on that card on whatever I've written for that day. So
Great.
I do a lot of checking in and listening. I wish I wrote more. I take copious notes a lot and I reflect on those. But really, it's about, for me, it really helped me to just check in with myself physically, emotionally, like mind, heart, and gut constantly. That has kept my balance.
That's a good reference to the mind, the heart, and the gut. And whenever we overuse one over the other, we can lose our way. It's really that trust. And each of you did your own work and continue to do your work on developing those senses. And one of the things that I remember is how much nature has meant to each of you, and walks in nature. And what would you say about that self-reflection process and being out in nature that perhaps turned up the volume on how you were already interacting with nature? How's that shown up for you with this greater self-awareness?
I would call it an out-of-body experience in a way. Just being surrounded in such a beautiful area. We're all in the Northwest, and it's green, it's lush, it's growing, and we are too.
I also think the stillness of nature, just going out every day if you can, to have that stillness of nature, kind of take some of the things off your shoulders a little bit. And I'm big on being out in nature. When my daughter gets stressed, she's in her 20s, and I said, "Have you been in nature today?" And so I really encourage people. Our team, they take walks for breaks, and they go outside. Even if it's raining, they just go outside and take a walk and be outside. So I think that is a positive tool to have.
Lisa, I've done that with my boys since they were born, basically. And get outside. I agree with you, Lucia. I feel like something happens where there's almost like an integration, that happens of, I might be like really working on something and like so in my head about it. And then I get out in nature and I'm moving, and it's just like, it feels like it kind of clicks in. It's a pretty amazing experience.
That's that HD experience you shared at the Women in Wine conference few years back, just being in that HD. Everything comes so much clearer.
Yes.
Get the cobwebs out. So nature, and using nature as a messenger, right? A metaphor for what's going on in your own life and what you want to create in your life. A lot of times nature will give us those messages, and if we're listening, we can apply it to our lives. And I know each of you have done that. Anything anyone would want to share about one of your metaphors or totems that you use to enrich your life?
I have one that's very top of mind because I'm fresh back from Hawaii. And that is, I don't exactly remember, Sarah, where we talked about this, but for me, there was a vision of laying in the middle of a body of water and floating on my back, and just that calm, everything you're just talking about nature, and allowing there's something about the freedom of being weightless and the sky above, and the earth is eventually below, and that is just like, that's something I revisit often. It served me in every aspect of my life. And when I was in Hawaii, I made a point to get out in the ocean and float every day, because there's nothing better than floating in the ocean.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
I think one of the sessions that you and I did, Sarah, too, is similar to Brianna. Mine is being on the beach with sand and really just having that calming effect of being by the water in sand. I lived in Florida for a number of years, and that just, for me, that's just a place that I can visually go and get more calm immediately. So that's kind of my visualization, I would say.
Just kind of feel it. The grains through the hand. Yeah.
Hearing about this, I wish I chose the beach. But no, I just constantly kept thinking of roots, and so I chose mountains and trees, really just swaying and kind of moving around with the wind, and how we can stand and be rooted very strongly in a way. So that's what I chose.
Well, it's a perfect metaphor in the Northwest, because there's a lot of trees and a lot of beauty, and that rootedness. I think sometimes, we talk about the breath, and I know one of the practices is breathing down and into the ground and imagining, your feet as being rooted. And, when we watch a really fine actor doing their work, and it just seems like, oh, it's so effortless, or this or that, it's just the same with leadership. There's a lot that goes into it. And what each of you are describing about how you have been investing in yourself and your awareness, your authenticity, your empowering language, being more direct, but also being more empathetic and receiving. There's a lot that goes into really great leadership. And I just want to applaud each of you for your commitment to yourself and to your openness to find those places that maybe were tough, tight, or tender, and you worked through them with such a level of devotion. And, sometimes you ended the session maybe in the midst of a struggle, but you went out there and you took on your practices, and you worked your way through it, through the tough and the muck and the mire, to have a leadership that is continuing and sort of evergreen, we'll say here in the Northwest, evergreen way of being with your leadership. So applause to each of you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'm going to do our wrap-up question for our viewers here. Let me just make sure there's no other. This is a new technology, by the way, for us. We haven't done this before, and I'm really thrilled that Brianna, Lucia, and Lisa were willing to play with us here at inviteCHANGE. So let's say I'm somebody who's never had a coach. Why would someone want one? You've given a lot already, but wrap it up here. And let's kick off with Lucia.
I would say, do it. Definitely. It's a surprise. You'll never know what you're going to expect, which is really the fun part. But it's just been such a positive and beautiful experience that has changed me for the better. And I'm, Sarah, you've complimented us so beautifully, but really it's because of you, that of your excellent partnership, that has encouraged me to share.
And I guess I would say I really learned the value of having somebody so skilled and trained to help me really grow, be accountable, provide toolbox and skills to think it through differently. And we all have great friends and great family, but really working with you, Sarah, has really pushed me to a whole new level. And you've just given me such a great partnership to get there. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Yes, I agree with both of you very much. I think the opportunity to replenish and recharge and have that built into my life has been crucial. And I just really, I cannot thank you enough, Sarah, for the work that we've done together. And you know, as leaders, we're asked every day, or we choose to show up every day with grace for our teams. And leader doesn't mean you're necessarily leading a team, but it's how you move through the world. And we really need to make sure that we're giving ourselves space to continue to show up the way that we want to and the way we can best serve our teams, our communities, our families.
Wonderful. All so true. And being asked to show up as leader, not perfection, but that leader that's just a half a step out in front of the team. So you know what's on the landscape, what's on the horizon, and you've really committed yourself to that, to be of service to your team. So it's a beautiful, beautiful commitment to be an authentic and generative leader. And I am thrilled again that you are all here today. And I would like to take a moment and thank inviteCHANGE for their enterprise solutions and this leadership and development channel for having us. And to my producers, Paige Christian extraordinaire, and Brighton West, our videographer and YouTube consultant extraordinaire. We're really, really fortunate. So I'm going to leave you with today, for whatever reason, Billie Jean King came into my mind, and I think it was the whole Forbes list, and the top women on the Forbes athlete list were both tennis players. And I'm a lot older than either of them. And in my day, Billie Jean King was willing to go to the mat for not just women, but for society. She really used her sport as a vehicle for something great and to help women gain their place, their rightful place in our society. This is a quote from her: "Don't let anyone define you. You define yourself." So have a great day, and thank you for joining us. We hope to see you next time.